Let's talk about the good apples. Now, we talked about the bad apples. Let's talk about the good apples. What does it take to maintain them? I think it takes communication, professional maintenance, respect, that goes without saying, fairness, that goes without saying, and reasonable rent. Remember, you're offering a product as a real estate owner, as an investor, and that product is, it's kind of like you bought the Kit Kat bar. You know what a Kit Kat bar is? Leave it to me to be given analogies on candy bars. But you bought the Kit Kat bar, and you're renting out the months. It's kind of like each section of the Kit Kat bar. You're renting out the months. That's what your product is. At the end of the day, you are manufacturing CADs, cash after debt service. Remember, I started the whole 2 days of property management talking about how important it is to manage NOI. Well, that's what you're managing. At the end of the day, after NOI, if you paid your debt service, if you have debt service, you want the cash flow. That's why it's so important to evict people that need to be evicted and to keep the good tenants when they're good. And this is what I think they're absolutely looking for. When we're talking about professional maintenance, again, if they've got a maintenance request, try to have a plan, or have your property management have a plan to get that request taken care of within 48 hours. Okay? Very, very important that you do that. Renewing leases. I think it's important to send a letter 45 days prior to lease expiration. When the tenant is there, they're good, they're paying reasonable rent, send that letter out on automatic pilot 45 days prior to lease expiration. Why 45 days? Well, at 45 days, you want to know if that tenant is planning on vacating the unit or staying. Again, if they're staying, you've got to send out to them a lease extension or lease addendum. They automatically know that their rent is going to be increasing by whatever percent it was in the lease originally, 3%, 4%, 5%. If they plan on going, you want to be aware of that within 2 weeks of that letter. So you have almost a full 30 days to get into that unit, assess the condition, and prepare to release that to another tenant. You want to try to minimize the empty months or the empty days in a month. Okay, again, consider it like that plane seat that I talked about. Send out lease renewals or prepare to release. Your property manager is going to have to do that. That is a function, by the way, that also starts during your due diligence, like I mentioned before. If you've got leases set to expire in 60 days, 45 days, and you're closing today, you immediately, one of the first things you're probably going to do is communicate to those tenants and send that lease or that letter out. Very important. And this slide probably should have been before the one before the good apples, but that's okay. We're adaptable here, no problem, right? With the bad apples, again, you want to recognize there's a problem. Of course, late payments, additional occupants, inappropriate noise level, unsupervised children, domestic problems. All this sounds like my childhood here. That was a joke. You guys didn't laugh at that either. I get funnier. I don't get funnier? I thought I got funnier as I went along. Anyway, all of these things could be grounds for eviction. Make sure that you have these things in your lease and stated as such. I think that's really important. We talked about going to the local court. We talked about negotiating the eviction and putting that in writing. The 30-day notice, we talked about that, having that tied to the lease, the move-in, move-out letter. We also talked about that. By the way, I may have a copy that I can show you if you're interested in seeing that after class or tomorrow. I can give you one of those, and I think that'll really help you. Matter of fact, I'll email it to Bronwyn, so she has that. She'll put it on the site, the move-in, move-out form that we use, okay? Surcharge deductions from the security deposit. Every time you use that move-in, move-out form, they've moved out, you notice the door's got a nick in it or needs to be fixed, the wall's got a hole in it, and that's $100 to fix, both of those things. Their security deposit is $750 or $770 or whatever it is. Subtract that $100 from the $770, put a statement together, send them a check out for $650 in the appropriate time. The state will require you to send their security deposit back within a certain period of time. Sometimes it's 14 days, other times it's 45 days, other times it's immediate, which is a little bit hard to do because you can't really assess what's wrong with the unit until they're completely out of there. So you've got to really kind of do your inspection that day kind of thing, all right? Okay, so let's go back now that we've kind of went through that scenario of a tenant finding or having an empty unit, finding a tenant, managing that tenant. Let's kind of take a step back now and go into overall generalities with respect to property management. Again, I'm giving you guys this information so that you know it, but I also want you to utilize this information if you're hiring a third-party property management firm. These are great topics to discuss with them. So what type of employees would you have with a property management company? You'd have, administration or an assistant, someone that does the books perhaps, a maintenance person, a property manager, or maybe even a leasing agent. A lot of times when you work with a property management company, they coin the term leasing agent that they'll assign to your house they're managing or your apartment building that they're managing. And that leasing agent is responsible for leasing that up. You've got vendors in there, excuse me, like subcontractors that would go in and do, say, plumbing work if it's outside of the scope of the maintenance person. So you kind of want to get an idea of who these people are. And also the tenants. I think it's a good idea if you're going to be managing the property yourself to kind of consider, and I might have mentioned this yesterday, kind of consider your tenants just as if they would be employees of your widget company. You're not making widgets, you're making cash flow. But if you had a widget company and you had 100 employees there, you'd want to make sure that your employees had a comfortable place to work, that maybe you were taking their input on suggestions. You want to do the same thing with tenants. So I kind of put them down as part of the employees. With all of these people, it's good to understand different things: job duties, schedules, how much they get paid. And I think it's a good idea to have an understanding of value. Again, I may have mentioned this yesterday because it's so important. Make sure your property management knows why you have a net operating income goal. The reason you have a net operating income goal is because that 6-unit building or that 12-unit building that you have, its value is tied directly to how much income the building is producing. Or if they're managing your single-family house, its value is directly tied to what the other properties are selling for in the area that have similar characteristics that have sold over the last 6 months. It's very important to have that knowledge. I want to talk about, we've talked about property management, and a big part of property management, half if not more, is the maintenance of your property. So I kind of want to make sure that before we leave here today, you guys have a real good understanding of maintenance. Now, it's important because really they're the customer service of your business, or they're the customer service of your property manager's business. I would also use them kind of like the eyes and ears of you, the owner. They're probably going to be the face that is seen most often. If someone's cutting the grass, perhaps, if you don't have an arrangement where the tenant does that, if they're coming in changing filters, if they're fixing a leaky faucet, that tenant is most likely to see the maintenance person than they are somebody in the office or you, the owner. So I think it's important to make sure that they do a little bit of property inspection when they're walking around. Something like this. Okay. All right. I've noticed you have a goat in the living room and you're growing marijuana in the bedroom. What's the deal here? You know what I mean. So they want to be the eyes and ears there. Also, tenant communication. I think you want to have a maintenance person that is presentable. Or if your property management company that you're selecting, I think they want to have maintenance personnel that are presentable. For instance, they should have a shirt with the logo on it. They should have an ID that states who they are. When you have a tenant at home, You just don't want anybody coming into the unit without a proper ID. So you want to make sure those items are in place. I think it's very, very important. There's 5 types of maintenance. 5 types of maintenance. And the 5 types of maintenance are, by the way, was that someone's phone that went off? Because mine was on silent. Mine's on silent. It was so realistic that I had to check mine, and it's on silent. It sounds like it's coming from this area. Could that be true? No? It sounds like an iPhone. Who in this area has an iPhone? You do. You do? Was that? No, yours is silent, I think. It sounds like over here. You want to do teapot, Bronwyn? Okay. All right. Don't think we're not listening, by the way. Oh, by the way, I guess I should turn my power on here. Hold on a minute. Stand by. That would help. There's 5 types of maintenance. The 5 types of maintenance are, and this is what you should be discussing with your property management company. The first type is emergency maintenance. If a tree falls on a house, or if a tree falls on an apartment building, obviously you're going to have an emergency on your hands. You're going to have maintenance personnel out there. The second one is preventative maintenance. You're doing things in order to prevent a situation down the road or prevent inefficiencies, such as changing furnace filters. That would be an example of that. The third one is corrective maintenance. Let's say that we've got a broken pane of glass in the door in one of the windows. We'll come in with a new pane of glass and replace that. That's corrective maintenance. The fourth one is custodial maintenance, making sure the main hallway of the apartment unit is clean. 6-unit buildings, 12-unit buildings, so on and so forth. If they got a main entrance, that main entrance tends to be one that's highly traveled. Mail that they don't want, newspapers that are unwanted, dirt, debris, leaves tend to go in there. That stuff should be cleaned up. Cosmetic maintenance. This would be like where you're repainting the siding or painting the sign for the 12-unit building, something like that. Something that's cosmetic in nature, where maybe you're cleaning up or adding a little bit of landscaping there. Again, remember, a lot of this stuff you want to do because you have to do. You want to keep your property in good condition. You should be asking the question, however, should you be charging more, or could you charge more if you add cosmetic maintenance? Or that's pretty much the only one on there that you'd be able to do that. By adding landscaping or painting, have you dressed the property up enough where you could actually charge a little bit more in rent? Okay, you should always be asking that question. Again, it's about focus on net operating income. Let's talk about supplies. I think it's important to have supplies in stock. So if you've got a couple single-family houses, if you have a 6-unit apartment building, a 12-unit apartment building, I would get an understanding of what type of faucets you have, what type of toilets you have, what type of light bulbs that you use. And I would keep supplies on hand, or at least have your property manager keep supplies on hand so they're ready to go. So you don't have to go out at the last moment and travel, spend extra time and money getting those. If you're in town, maybe you pick up an extra faucet repair kit type thing and have it at the house. Maybe, just maybe, if you're renting out a home, the person renting the home has the ability to make light repairs. Might be an option. If so, you want to put that language in the lease and also talk about liability issues with that, but that could be an option as well. Question?
Quick question on maintenance and flooring.
Yeah.
Maybe you've already covered this today, but in your multi-units in Chicago, and then maybe anything in hot climates, but say the common areas, are you going carpeting, tile, even in, say, Chicago, or what are you doing with that side of stuff?
In Chicago, we definitely have flooring. Yeah.
Really?
It's a
Are you
thing
sure?
that we have in there. We definitely have flooring in place. And, okay, cool. This is broke right now, so I'm going to have to address that in a little bit. We definitely have, where'd you go? We definitely have flooring in place. In Chicago, it's typical in apartment units to put in carpet, with the exception of the threshold, the entryway to the house, and maybe, you know, a laundry room, things like that. Bathrooms and kitchens typically are going to have hard surfaces, but in the living room and in the bedrooms, it's typical to have carpet there. In areas like the Southwest or in Florida, it's more typical to have a tile type floor in those areas. Some people ask me about hardwoods or laminates or, you know, things like that. Make sure that you're looking at what's appropriate in those areas. If you're renting out a house and it's more of a high-end dollar house, you might go with a different type of floor style, hardwood, or maybe not ceramic tile, but maybe a porcelain tile, something a little bit higher end. You should be getting higher end rent for that. So it'd be pretty easy to check what's appropriate there. But in Chicago, it's carpet in the living room and bedrooms, hard surfaces in the kitchens and bathrooms. I think we've got someone talking not on the microphone for the camera. I don't know. I think we've got, so I think his question is, would I ever go with a slate? Is that what I'm hearing from the sky? Basically, okay. So the question is, would I ever go with a slate type material? Again, if it's appropriate. You're not going to put that in a C, Class C apartment unit, or, you know, a house that you haven't renovated or something like that. The other thing to check is, if you're going to put in slate, could you get higher rent in that market? If the answer is no, don't do it. Don't do it. That would be the question I would have. Now, if somebody else has a question or comment on that, they may want to go to the microphone so we can hear that out in TV land. I don't know why I'm doing this all of a sudden, but I am.
Well, I guess...
Oh, hey, we've got a question from the audience.
We do.
Yes.
For me, it was a durability issue and the maintenance side. I mean, the carpets you can clean, but especially in the high traffic areas, maybe I'm going too cheap with carpet, but I mean, some of those areas, I think it's more almost a 5-year lifespan where slate, as long as it's not getting broken, it's lifetime, 30-year, 10-year, whatever it is, more than the carpet, in my opinion. So just kind of curious on what your experiences have been.
Yeah, did you hear what I was talking about earlier today when I was talking about flooring and carpet cleaning?
Probably not.
You weren't here. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So you missed. Now we're spending time talking about carpet cleaning again. Is that what you're telling me?
Please.
Okay. All right. So basically, what your future is you're going to end up nothing. No, I'm just kidding. If you don't go to class. That was a public service announcement for the kids. No, so your question is, I don't know why I thought. Okay. Your question is, again, it comes down to what's appropriate in that market. What I would do is what I talked about earlier. That's right, you weren't here. But what I talked about earlier was this. I said, put in your lease, the responsibility to clean the carpets is going to be on the onus of the tenant. They're responsible to clean it, they have to pay for it, and they're required to use one of 3 contractors to do that. Not all carpet cleaners are good. They can actually tear up your carpet. Make sure that someone's reputable for a fair price and carries liability insurance in case there's an issue. The same thing with painting. Getting back to your other question, it all comes down to math. You're going to spend more money on slate, but again, if you're putting it into a C property in a C area, I don't know if you want to spend that type of money. You've got to consider a lot more factors. How long you're going to hold on to the property, if you're going to fix and flip it down the road, is the market going to increase in quality down the road, those type of things. So I would weigh all of those things out financially before I'd be putting slate or a higher end floor product anywhere. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay. I understand your comment about durability, though, and I like that. Hardwoods obviously should be appropriate to a higher end place. They're not as durable. They need maintenance. They need some of those things. You wouldn't put those in a C-type property. Tile, ceramic tile, although it's durable, the problem that I've seen as I walk through units is it cracks. Somebody drops something on that, maybe in a a lower end area, they're not as careful, they don't know maybe how they crack, and now all of a sudden you got to fit a tile that doesn't look the same as the rest of them. So you got those things to deal with as well, okay? So maybe you just concrete or blacktop the whole thing. See there, now that worked a little bit. Now that was funny stuff. Now don't blacktop or concrete your rental homes inside. Disclaimer. Okay. So have some of these things in stock. Ask your property manager, do they carry some of those things in stock? Would it be less expensive for you to change out to the type of faucets or toilets that they have in stock, so it might be less money for you ongoing? Something to talk about there.